All right, kids, it's July. We're just past the halfway point of the year, so you know what time it is. Spirit Halloween will be taking over all former Toys R Us's and Bed Bath & Beyond's until November. And I've already accepted the fact that the most annoying interracial couple is doing this Stack and Mary costume from Sinners for Halloween. Friends of Robert Griffin III know it's going to be him and his wife, but I bet not see any more conservative guys scared of cities IRL. I've seen enough. See, a few years ago, Brookings interviewed nearly 100 business leaders, employers, officials, and residents in New York, Chicago, Seattle, and Philadelphia in order to understand how those cities and their downtown areas were slowly recovering after the deepest, darkest part of the pandemic. And when it came to the safety and security of downtown areas, this is what they noticed.
When we were doing our interviews, people often conflated crime and unsheltered homelessness within the same breath.
Interesting. And right or wrong, I picture this guy who won't park his Ford Super Duty anywhere near tall buildings because too many of those people are there. Now, that clip came from a Vox video, and that Brookings article will go on to say that local leaders seeking to rebuild safe and vibrant downtowns must do so without letting the perceptions and politics of crime drive policy and practice. To the average person in America, crime always seems worse than what it actually is, except for where they live. Well, today we're going to talk about how crime has decreased since 2020 and 2021, murder and homicide in particular, featuring, to some degree, the cities I mentioned a minute ago. So far, 2025 data says in Philadelphia, there has been a 29.8% decrease in homicides from the previous year. Seattle shows a 25.9% drop in shootings. Murder in Chicago is down 25%. And in New York, murder remains down 24% year to date. Although there were 3 more murders in April of 2025 than in the same month last year. Plus, on July 4th, there were 0 shootings or murders in NYC. The last time in recorded history that happened was never. Was House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries on patrol that night or something? We're going to have to talk about him one day. Those numbers came from Jeff Asher and Police Commissioner of New York, Jessica Tisch, respectively. And I want to add, so far this year, the Columbus Division of Police said there's been 39 homicides compared to 37 by the end of June last year. However, Columbus stayed above pre-COVID-19 pandemic levels last year when the city reached a record of 205 homicides in 2021. And that's key. I bring up different sources because if you cite a specific one, guys who are not scared, bro, will ironically shoot it down.
Crime has been going down. I could go find instances of crimes taking place, right?
The FBI lied about that. The FBI lied about that. That crime is not going down. And they actually altered and admitted those statements. Crime didn't go down. It's not even an argument. It actually went up.
You do know the FBI revised the crime data.
2022.
Saw that thing on the news. Okay, I'll stop. Yes, data from about 65% of the US population was covered in the FBI's annual report in 2021. Not the typical 95%. The FBI required police departments to report data using a new system that year. Yet, in 2022, the FBI's data coverage returned to 94% of the population. Even with that, the FBI data's trend lines have generally followed a similar pattern to what's put together by other groups. So, mainstream media and many publications agree that homicides in the nation's largest cities is falling and overall violent crime continues to go back to 2019 levels. And those big cities usually vote blue. With that said, what do we attribute this success to? The president? ICE deporting the undocumented and documented, really? Who gets credit? Well, I can tell you who ain't getting any.
The truth is, William McNeil Jr. was non-compliant with JSO officers within 21 seconds after he was stopped for multiple civil infractions. His non-compliance quickly rose to the level of criminal resistance to a police officer. McNeil was arrested and pled guilty to resisting a police officer without violence.
Without violence. Keep that in mind. On February 19th, William McNeil Jr., a 22-year-old black man, was sitting in the driver's seat of a car asking to speak to the Jacksonville deputy supervisor when one officer broke his window, punched him in the face, pulled him from the vehicle, punched him again, then multiple officers took him to the ground. I'm not going to show the violence inflicted on that young man, and if you're watching this, you may have already seen it. Now, when someone named Eric asked Sheriff Waters, by the way, Reese, get your people's man, about the optics of mostly white officers attacking a young black man, this was his response.
What I don't understand is, and I know you said that this was not ruled criminal, sucker punching the guy in the jaw.
First of all, let me stop you. Not a sucker punch. The whole statements about the black issue. I wouldn't work here if we're after black men or black people, period. I can tell you he wouldn't. I can tell you any other African American or black male or female that works here wouldn't work here if we're after, if our black citizens are under siege. Not the case. Not at all.
I'd like to take this opportunity to remind the audience about my "the term Uncle Tom doesn't always apply" episode. No reason. Sheriff Waters followed that up with a comparison about how when he got pulled over as a young man, he did what he was told. Simple compliance is what he called it. However, he already admitted that McNeil was not violent. Just know that if McNeil had escalated to the point that officers did, he would be dead. The calmness he displayed in the short excerpt that I showed is what he maintained the whole time. It's crazy how cops who have weapons, personal protective equipment, and backup are the ones acting irrational.
I'm not excusing that administratively. I'm gonna say that to you one more time. I'm not excusing that administratively.
So is he excusing it technically? What does this even mean? How many times he says it doesn't matter. McNeil's lawyer said he had been pulled over and had been accused of not having his headlights on, even though it was daytime. He wasn't a threat or a danger to anyone, but he pled guilty to resisting a police officer without violence and driving on a suspended driver's license. He was sentenced to 2 days in jail. Officer D. Bowers, the bastard who beat him, has been suspended and stripped of law enforcement duties pending a review into whether he violated any of the sheriff's office policies. And real quick, according to the Associated Press, the sheriff also said the cell phone camera footage from inside the car, quote, does not comprehensively capture the circumstances surrounding the incident because cameras can only capture what can be seen and heard. So they're doing what they were designed to do, mother. What else does he need for proof that officers violated someone? Taste of vision? Well, this black college student that his officers beat up has injuries that include a concussion and a broken tooth that pierced his lip and led to several stitches. So not all of us can taste right now, can we? If you weren't aware, the governor of Florida is a Republican, and the Sunshine State often votes red. Clearly. However, if you're living in a blue state, your police force is trash too.
Connecticut is so racist that the cops had to forge over 60,000 traffic citations to white people that did not exist just so it didn't look like they only pulled over minorities.
A new 79-page audit conducted by researchers at UConn state it's highly likely that more than 25,000 tickets were falsified. Researchers also found an additional 35,000 tickets had significant inaccuracies and likely to be false. Researchers compared CSP data with data from the state judicial system and the state's racial profiling system to note discrepancies.
How racist? Connecticut. Governor Ned Lamont, who vowed to get to the bottom of it, and I think they did, urged the public not to jump to conclusions. Should have said that to the officers who saw black people driving and decided that they were guilty of a moving violation based on their skin color. Oh, and that creator later brought up an Arkansas city that was so bad that they were forbidden from giving away speeding tickets for a year. And I happen to have TikToks about it saved in my phone that I've been waiting to use for a while now. So
we first told you back in August about how Menifee, a city with less than 300 people, was caught violating the state's speed trap law. 1 year of the city not allowed to issue speeding tickets, something that can hit these smaller towns hard.
Menifee may be the most recent city to break our state's speed trap law, but there's another city that comes to mind when you think speed trap.
In 2018, Damascus broke the state speed trap law.
That's right. I don't know if you couldn't hear that due to being deaf or hard of hearing or can't listen unless captions are on, but Menifee, Arkansas and Damascus, Arkansas got in trouble for speed traps. The point of all this is law enforcement seems a little too busy and distracted to be actively decreasing crime and violence. Meanwhile, they are violent, intentionally or otherwise.
Officer, was young, vibrant, and a hard worker. Prior to going out and attempting to make that stop, she had already processed 2 other guns working that day. She was a working police officer trying to keep the streets safe.
A 36-year-old police officer who was a 4-year veteran of the Chicago PD and the mother of a young daughter was shot and killed while on duty. And side note, when ABC News reported on the tragedy, at no point in this entire article of 16 paragraphs did they mention that another cop killed this cop by shooting her in the back. Nor does it mention the name of the cop who killed this cop. Nor will the cop face accountability. Nor does it mention that the civilians involved never fired at them. ABC did state the number of times police officers in the United States have been feloniously killed in the line of duty, along with the percentage that firearms were used in those incidents. Accidental law enforcement deaths have decreased though. The Chicago Tribune reported that authorities charged the man who pointed a gun at Rivera's partner, but didn't fire it, with armed violence, use of a firearm without a firearm owner's identification card, possession of a fake ID, and drug possession. And don't forget, Chicago was the first city targeted by this administration's mass deportation raids. The Windy City was reportedly chosen because of the estimated 18% of its more than 2.6 million residents being foreign born. That and its public feud with Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. We'll get to him and ICE later on in the video. Until then, the right has thrown shade at large Democrat-led cities for decades without doing much to help the cause. As was said earlier, we shouldn't let perception of crime drive policy and practice. And if that wasn't enough, this current administration and now Immigration Customs Enforcement, along with conservatives, are debating based on outdated data from a department that they don't trust.
Crime in this country is through the roof, and we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities.
The man who said that he should get all the credit if Republicans won elections, none of the blame, and will tell you that when the stock market does well, it's due to him, yet when the economy cools off, it's not his fault, has little to nothing to do with this crime decrease. Clay Travis, seen here posing for the most middle-aged looking man calendar, he's Mr. March, posted that video from October of 2024 and claimed, the revised FBI data now says crime is up. Trump was right again. Fast forward to today and Clay is saying, we are headed for potential all-time lows in murders and also are arresting and deporting hundreds of thousands of illegal criminals. What changed? Is he tying this crime decrease to the imprisonment of what they would call illegals? Look, we're in the midst of history when it comes to crime or lack thereof. Both red and blue-led cities are currently doing their part, even though there really isn't a such thing as a large city with a Republican mayor. Anyways, what we're currently seeing is part of the overall steady decline that we've experienced since the early to mid-90s. And I'll add, the sharpest one-year drop on record occurred in 1996, when the number of murders nationwide fell by a little more than 9% compared to 1995. And the crime spike we lived through from a few years ago is proving to be, I'm hoping, temporary. Any graph displaying the homicide rate or the violent crime rate that spans the last 30 to 40 years will show that. So I'm not saying Clay Travis can't read a graph, but he wouldn't be real about this one. He tweeted Gallup poll results with the caption, black and white relations were pretty favorable for most of the 21st century, and then social media and BLM happened and everyone decided things were awful. And there are several things about that. First, after 9/11, too many Americans decided Muslims, Arabs, and Sheiks were awful. We should ask them what race relations were like at that time. Second, notice how white people's ratings, in blue here, are almost always higher than black people's, which is in green. The vast majority of time, except for right here when it takes a big dive. Obama, his tan suit, and brown mustard are the reasons for poor black-white relations, screech Tammy, I don't see color Laren. Third, MySpace launched in 2003. Facebook did so in 2004. Twitter was 2006. And Black Lives Matter kicked off in 2013. All these factors could have come together to make white adults way less likely to say that race relations were very or somewhat good in the middle of the 2010s. Sure. Or they came to express their aggrievement on social media when something else went down in 2015. Seems like the only difference between October 2024, when crime was up and through the roof, till now, when the rate is projecting to be better this year, is the guy who's in office, not what he did. And just like the rule I came up with telling us to make Trumpers name the policies he used to create the economy they boast about, I want to know what he did to bring down the nation's murder rate and homicides inside of 9 months. So I went running for answers. I came across this article from the Daily Signal with the headline, "Murder Rates Plummet Under President Trump." For proof of how the murder rate in 2024 also fell from the 2020 spike and returned to pre-COVID-19 levels, the writer brought up 2 executive orders Trump signed aimed at reducing crime rates in America. One executive order being restoring the death penalty and protecting public safety. And if you'll forgive me, I'm not even going to turn to stats and figures for this one. Although I could, but I'll just put it to you like this. Are we under the impression that criminals and gangs look up and study the consequences of getting caught? Killers kind of expect to get away with it. Hey, we about to ride on these marks. Wait, I just got an alert from Democracy Now! Stating that I could get executed sometime within the next few decades, perhaps, if I get apprehended, that is, for this criminal act that I was about to embark on, but I thought better of it with this newfound knowledge. No, that's not how this works. That scenario, or my accent, what was that supposed to be? Oakland or something? Murder and homicide is most likely to occur in the heat of the moment, in a conflict between people who might know one another. Drinks could be involved, it's dark outside, and mass shooters don't expect to or want to survive large-scale acts of violence and terror. What are we even talking about? Furthermore, the Daily Signal said on March 27th, Trump signed an executive order improving the safety of the nation's capital by keeping dangerous criminals off the streets and strengthening the Washington, D.C. police force. Here's Trump telling the Fraternal Order of Police that the national murder rate has plummeted by 28%, largely because of what they're doing. Lies. And that was just after making this claim.
Upon taking office, I declared a national emergency on our southern border, and we reduced the number of illegal border crossers released into the United States by 99.999%. You can't do much better than that. We've removed thousands of violent criminal illegal aliens from our communities as part of the largest deportation effort in American history.
ICE is America's largest interior law enforcement agency. It's receiving $150 billion between now and 2029, an annual average of $37.5 billion, which would make it the 16th biggest military budget in the world. ICE's detention budget would increase to $45 billion to build immigration jails for single adults and families. All of this funding coincides with the proposed dismantling of the Department of Education, a reduction in Medicaid and Medicare, an executive order removing the unhoused from the streets, one of the largest transfers of wealth in American history through a tax plan, and prisons starting to empty. And none of this is a coincidence. This current administration would like to use the lack of housing, for instance, to fill those prisons back up. And this law enforcement, which was deputized not for diplomacy, but for the sake of deportation, partners with local precincts around the country. And they love their costumes. Counties are allowing ICE agents to wear masks while picking brown people up from their employers or court or filing taxes, unironically. And this could be with or without warrants. Migrants and immigrants don't commit more crime than U.S. citizens. ICE and the police are violent and incite violence. That's what they want. That's how they like it. A man died trying to escape an ICE raid. And I cannot stress enough, our president has not done, and I want to say anything, that has decreased crime in this second term. I mean, shout out to the First Step Act, but even then. The state of Ohio's very Republican governor made police ticket quotas illegal. Dope. And the former officer that murdered Andre Hill here in Columbus was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Yes. However, just like when employers commit wage theft, and it isn't often considered a crime, when the police kill and are violent, they aren't regularly charged and convicted. Speaking of wages, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has the Scaling Community Violence Intervention for a Safer Chicago initiative. Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott came up with a comprehensive violence prevention plan. I encourage you to check those out. Chicago typically has the highest overall number of murders per year, and Baltimore has the highest murder rate, respectively. And admittedly, I don't know if their policies and initiatives are what's doing it for their cities. Keeping it consistent, they might also be benefiting from the great crime decrease from the 90s that was interrupted by the pandemic. I sound crazy, but even experts don't agree on why these graphs have a downward slope like this. Of course, it could/should be because of more than one thing. No more lead in paint and gasoline? But I know that I can see proactive measures, neighborhood engagement, and data-driven strategies, which focus on summer jobs, keeping community centers open later, access to mental health resources, and community policing, which is made better when collaborating with the cops. So have them name the policy or executive order coming from Donald Trump or Republicans at the federal/national level. They don't deserve any more than a little bit of credit for our collective success. They're not providing assistance to places they think are sketchy just because black and brown people are around. So we gonna be all right.